What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to start a new project. What you guys are looking at here is my 1984 Workhorse GT 1100. Now, this isn't the first time I've had a Workhorse on the channel. This is actually the third or fourth time, if I remember right. For those who don't know what a Workhorse is compared to a wheel horse, I'll do a quick rundown. However, if you want a deeper dive into it, go back and check out the GT 1642 or GT 1600 videos. I went into a little bit more specific information. But the short story is, back in the early 80s, some large retailers reached out to Wheel Horse and said, hey, we'd like to sell an affordable tractor in our store. The wheel horses you sell are a little too pricey. So Workhorse, trying to compete with cheaper manufacturers at the time like MTD or whoever else, they developed the Workhorse line. Now, essentially it was a C-Series with some fancier sheet metal on it that was painted gray instead of red, and instead of using the Kohler engines, they used Briggs. But with cosmetic differences aside, essentially this is the exact same tractor that they made and sold to their dealers. It's got the same rear end, it's got the same quick attach setup on it, or the Attach-O-Matic. That's why you see these with red decks, snow plows, stuff like that. There's no proprietary attachments to a Workhorse compared to the wheel horse. Now, it is a GT-1100, GT standing for garden tractor, the 11 meaning 11 horsepower, and the 00 meaning that this tractor was sold as a tractor without an attachment. Now, a little history on this particular tractor. I believe it was last spring. I picked this up off a feller about an hour away. At the same time I bought this one, I bought the other Workhorse GT-1142, I think it was, that we actually did an engine swap on it way back in the channel. You guys have to go back and look for it if you're interested in watching that. Really fun. We did a comparison between the Kohler and a couple different Predator engines. At the time I bought these, he had told me he had been using this up until a few weeks before I purchased it. He had said he was out using it, mowing up some leaves, and just quit running on them. He did tell me a little bit of history about the engine. He had some valve work done on it, and the way it sounds is it's got some pretty bad valve issues. Now, since I brought it home, I have tried to start it a couple times. I can kind of get it to run on ether, but it's not happy, it's not healthy. It's got some serious issues going on with the engine. So it's pretty much been sitting outside for about a year now. But overall, cosmetically, this tractor is very nice. It has got some real nice wheels and tires on it. All the sheet metal's there. It really doesn't have a whole lot of paint fade, not a whole lot of rust. It's honestly just dirty and filthy from sitting. Now, you guys have watched me do several engine swaps on these tractors in the past. And the most common comment or question I get whenever I do one of those is, will that certain horsepower be enough to power a mowing deck or a cutting deck? And honestly, I don't know. But today we're going to find out. So I have got a fresh, out-of-the-box Predator 212 from Harbor Freight. In order to make this engine swap a little bit easier, I also have got an engine mounting plate, and we're going to need this here. This is actually a shaft adapter. I'm pretty sure that Briggs engine has got a 1-inch output shaft. This is only a 3/4. So you use a shim like this to shim the pulley, to shim the shaft size up to work with the factory PTO. Now, we'll get into the specifics on that engine plate later. Now we will do a deeper dive into the engine plate mounting stuff later in the video. I just want to show you guys what engine we're going to be using. This is your standard run-of-the-mill pull start 6.5 horsepower 212. I think right now these at Harbor Freight are like 150 bucks. Every once in a while you can catch them on sale for about 100, but they are very, very good, cheap, reliable engines. This tractor currently has got the rear discharge 36-inch deck. It has got some pretty bad rust in the corners and stuff, but he told me it worked fine, so we'll have to wait and see. But enough talking, let's go ahead and dig into this and get this old stuff ripped off. Now, if I remember right, yeah, there's no battery in this. I actually stole it out of this for a core. But the beautiful thing about doing this swap is that there's no chopping or modifying really required, especially to the wiring harness, stuff like that. Since that's a pull start engine, you don't have to worry about making wiring connections or adapting harnesses, stuff like that. And what you could do, if you know this engine's bad, you could take this off, slap that Predator on, keep your mowing rig up and running while your engine's being rebuilt, and then swap everything back when the time comes. The biggest struggle we're probably going to have is making the clutch brackets work on that engine. We'll probably have to do some modifying on that. That way the linkage all jives up like it's supposed to. But honestly, it's not going to be that bad. So first thing first, let's go ahead and get the PTO linkage taken apart. We'll get the belt zapped off there and see if we can get that pulley off, and then we're on to some engine bolts. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie guys, it's been a hot minute since I've actually worked on one of these. I've been pretty wrapped up doing the old golf cart content here lately. If you guys haven't checked those videos out yet, go and check them out. I think they're very interesting. Get our mule drive backed off here. What I'm taking off here is the, I don't know, I call it the brake shoe for the PTO. This slows it down whenever you disengage it. So now this should slide off. Yeah, bearing looks good in there. Yeah, this all looks really good. Quite a bit of life left on our clutch. Now we are down to our drive belt pulley. This is kind of the whole bread and butter of the operation. This will go on first, and the clutch, all that stuff actually bolts to this. Hopefully this one don't put up too much of a fight. This is a keyed pulley, so we'll have some fun getting that off. I'm hoping we'll have enough slack in this belt. Yep. Push the clutch pedal down, we can take that off. See if we can get this fuel line off. Hopefully this spider house is vacant. These Briggs engines use a pulse pump. That's what this is here. You've got a fuel line in, and you have got engine vacuum working the pump. Then you've got your fuel line out going to your carburetor. So all we need to worry about is disconnecting this one. And down here in this oily mess is our throttle cable. Now, as far as wiring goes, this one was very simple. All I did was disconnect the starter wire from the solenoid. This blue wire must be some kind of engine ground or something. This was looped around here to a terminal on the front underneath the carburetor. And we had this one quick disconnect right here that plugs in right underneath the starter. So now the only thing that's technically holding this engine on is its engine bolts. So before we take those out, we do need to take some measurements. Before we go taking this engine off, we need to measure where the output shaft is on the engine. The reason why that's important is belt alignment. If you want your factory tin work to work, if you want your factory belt guides, all that stuff to work, you need to make sure you put this crank in the exact same place as the old one. However, I think it's going to be easier for us to measure if we go ahead and get this drive pulley out of the way, and it's also going to be easier to fight it if it decides to not come off. Oh, that thing ain't budging. I didn't think we'd get that lucky, but let me fight with this for a little bit, guys, and see if I can get this off. Now, I don't necessarily recommend using this style of puller on all your pulleys. Your thinner tin drive pulleys are likely to bend. This thicker cast pulley is a little bit stronger. Oh, we got it moving now. That might have been all we needed. All right, that wasn't too terrible. All right, now back to the important stuff. Really, you need about 3 measurements. You need to know the distance from front or back of the tractor to the center of the crank. Now on these workhorses and wheel horses, it's very simple to figure out where center's at because you've got this plate that holds your PTO bracket. The crank is exactly centered with this hole right here. So we got that to go off as a reference. The other thing you need to measure is the height of the PTO. Now I'm going to use this straight edge to figure the height of the PTO. 5 3/8. The other thing you need to figure is the mounting face of the engine in correlation to the frame rail. Since we want that pulley to sit in the exact same spot, we need to measure to see how far over this engine sits on the frame. I believe that is 7/8 of an inch from the outside of our frame rail to the mounting face of the engine. And that's it. I'm gonna write all these down and then we can get this engine off. Well, as you guys can see, there's not a whole lot of room in here, so I'm not going to really bother trying to film taking these nuts off. But essentially, we've got 4 bolts running up. There's a nut there, in the corner buried underneath all that junk. And then here in the back, we have got 2 more. So I'll bring y'all back when I get those off and we're ready to pick the engine up. All right, I got all the engine mounting bolts out. I have got my lifting gear bolted onto the engine. Let's snatch this thing out of here. Have I mentioned lately how much I love my ceiling hoist? Man. See, look how simple that was. My back don't hurt, no cussing involved. Links will be in the description. Well, with the engine out of the way, we have got a nice blank canvas, but it's not clean yet. So let's take advantage of the engine being off, roll this outside, and give it a much needed bath. As y'all can see, I didn't waste any time getting this thing rolled back in here and back to work on mocking this engine up. These little predators just always look right at home on these tractors. Now, the easiest way to go about measuring the height offset and get you a nice straight edge, something flat to measure off of, you can see the center line on this crank is about 5 11/16, give or take, whereas the Predator is about 4 3/8. So doing some quick math, don't mind me changing my fractions around. That's the only way I can get my brain to comprehend this. We need to make up 1 5/16 inches in height. I don't know how I want to go about doing that yet. I had thought that this adapter plate was going to do it for us, but this is actually over 2 inches in height difference. And I think that extra ½ inch is just going to be too much and it's going to throw the belt alignment off. Alternatively, I could make some spacers out of washers. I don't know yet. I've got some flat bar I can use, drill some holes. We'll come back to that, put a pin in it. But what we can go ahead and do is get our engine lined up and get it centered and get our holes marked and get them drilled, because raising that engine up isn't going to change those other measurements. I have got this thing set up with about 7/8 protrusion off the frame rail. I've got it as dead center as I can get it. So we're ready to mark some holes. Now there's 2 different methods I've used in the past, and I'll probably show you guys both. One option is to mark your 4 corners of your engine on your plate and get you a template like this. I've had this for years now. We'll take the engine off and lay this down and line our 4 corners up with this cutout, and then we'll trace our holes to this plate. The other option, get you some nail polish or some model paint and a real stubby paintbrush or a Q-tip, and we'll actually dip this in the paint, use some pliers to get it down in those bolt holes to mark it out. Kind of tricky, it's kind of funky, but this is about the best way I figured out how to do it. As you guys can see, using the old paintbrush method, it's kind of messy. It's hard to get the paint to go just where the bolt holes are at. That's why I kind of like to do both methods at the same time. So you can see our blue paint. I'm going to lay our stencil down in here. And I'm just going to use a center punch and mark these. Well, we got our engine mounting holes drilled. Now we need to figure out a spacer design to lift the engine up. What I'm going to do is use some of this square tubing stock that I've got left over from the scrap pile. Now this does measure 1.5 inches, so it's about 3/16 thicker than we need. But I think by the time I tighten it down, this will give a little bit. I think we're going to be okay. Yeah, the new spacers ain't looking too bad in there. So yeah, we've got the engine somewhat mounted. I haven't tightened the bolts yet. I'm going to leave those loose until we absolutely have to tighten them. That way I've got some wiggle room. Now that the engine's in place, we can work on putting that shaft adapter on and getting all our pulley stuff figured out. Now I will have the link to this in the description if you guys are interested in checking it out. It is a 3/4 to 1 inch shaft adapter, and it even comes with, if the camera will focus, a modified key. And if you guys have ever used one of these, the shaft adapters are pretty finicky. Don't be surprised if you got to go at it with some sandpaper to get everything to fit right. This one appears to be going on pretty good. Oh yeah. Now something I am going to have to do, this is what I'll call it the hub adapter for the PTO, what it actually rides on. As you guys can see, this is a slip over fit on this adapter, and it is going to hit this keyway. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this keyway, trim it off flat, and I'm also going to cut this shaft adapter down flush with the end of our crank. Now 2 days ago when I started this video, it was about 80 degrees out and sunny. Now today it's only about 45 and very windy. Gotta love Indiana weather. But anyway, made a little progress. I got the sleeve adapter and everything cut down. I've got the PTO sitting on there mocked up. I have got the engagement rod, again, mocked up in position, so now we can do the next hurdle, which is figuring out that top bracket. Now here's the factory setup on the Briggs. You can see it's about 3-inch height difference from the top of the crank to the top of this bracket. So we've got to try to emulate that on that Predator. Now you can't really see it, but behind this dry pulley here, there's actually 4 threaded holes on the side cover on these Predators for bolting accessories to, something like that. But there's not quite enough room to use that. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to utilize these 2 bolts here on this side cover. Now I do have one of these extra brackets laying around that I can modify and not worry too much about. So if I screw it up too bad, we've always got an extra one over there. But anyway, here's my plan. I kind of marked out the new center line of where the new bolts need to be for this thing to be positioned properly. Now, it's not going to be as easy as just drilling new holes. I don't quite have enough material due to the bolt pattern on the Predator being larger than these bolt holes here. I'm going to take a piece of that 1/4 inch flat stock, cut me out a putt piece. I'm going to trim that bracket. I'm going to butt weld these together, and I'm going to cut some slots in that bracket. That way I've got some adjustment on that because I don't know exactly where the center line needs to be on this yet. Okay, hopefully now you guys can kind of visualize this a little bit better. So by adding this piece on here, I'm going to be able to cut some slots in here about 1 inch long on each side, and it's going to give us some adjustment side to side. And as long as I make my marks right, it should get this bracket at the right height on the new Predator. So I'm going to go ahead and glue these 2 pieces together, and we'll go from there. Well, we've got the 2 pieces glued together. I'm going to go ahead and mock this thing up on the engine and see if we're even close. It's kind of hard to show you guys, but I'm going to attempt to make some marks on this thing for my bolt holes and get some slots cut out in this thing, and we'll try to mount this on the engine and see what we end up with. All right, I've got the bracket put back on the engine. I think I've got it centered. And again, guys, this is just kind of the rough design so far, but I think we're going to be okay. I think I have got it dialed in. So I managed to find a couple bolts. I've got 2 washers on the back side of the bracket to space it out away from the engine like I was talking about. And just everything's lining up good. I've roughly got this rod put back in here, and this is also fully adjustable. And again, the engine's not mounted down yet, but as you can see, it's going to pull it tight just fine. All right, I went through and replaced all the engine mounting bolt nuts with nylocks. I got all those tightened down. The engine is nice and secure on the tractor. Let's go ahead and get our drive belt put back on before it's too covered up and we can't get to it. Belt went back on there great. That is a good sign that we got our engine lined up right. And let's go ahead and get our new modified bracket put on for hopefully the last time. I decided to get fancy with the color. Figured I'd do something a little bit different than just black. Maybe it doesn't match. I figured it might blend with the tractor a little bit better. Go ahead and get our clutch disc put back on. And then our hold downs. I doubt you'll be able to see it on camera, but there's actually a little groove cut in this shaft adapter that these slip into. And that's what sandwiches everything together on the drive pulley. And finally, the outer pulley. Very nice. And we might as well go ahead and put our belt back on. We'll probably have to adjust this later. I'm just going to get it set up somewhere kind of close. Whenever we go to use the deck, we'll know pretty quick if the clutch is going to slip or not. Well, we are down to the finishing touches on this thing before we try it out. I went through and zip tied all the old wiring and stuff up and out of the way, had it looking nice and neat. Now I have got 16 ounces of 10W30 engine oil I'm going to be putting in this. I think it is finally time to try this thing out. We got fresh oil in it, fresh gas. We should be good. Probably have to crank it a few times. These new engines usually take a minute to prime up, so here we go. Tractor is in neutral, so it shouldn't go anywhere. That was easy. Don't know if you guys caught that, but the clutch is engaging with the rod. I had to adjust it a little bit, but the deck belt is slipping on the pulley. So like I was concerned about, I think this deck is a little locked up from sitting for a little bit. So let me play with this thing, and it could just be the belts are seized on the pulleys. I don't know, let me mess with this a little bit, and I'll bring y'all back when I get it figured out. Well, guys, I messed around with the deck pulleys. I think it was just a little stuck from sitting. So I think we're going to be okay. So let's go ahead and start this thing back up and try again and make sure that our clutch engagement is right. I mean, it is noisy, but it's working. All right, I'm gonna hit this deck with some grease, lube it up, and we're gonna take it out and try it out and see what happens. You guys, I'm beyond thrilled with how good this engine swap turned out. I know you guys have seen me do several engine swaps in the past, but I've never tried making the factory PTO work. I've always been kind of intimidated by the clutch bracket. But as you guys saw, with a little bit of time and some scrap metal, you can make it work. The only time I got that engine to bog down was way in the back. I was going through some thick grass. Not to mention, we've had 3 inches of rain in the last 2 days. So I know the grass is wet, and I was in second gear, and that was the only time I got that engine to bog down just in the slightest. But that being said, I'm completely confident telling you guys that a 6.5 horsepower Predator has got plenty of power to spin one of these decks. Knowing it'll turn this old rusty crusty 36-inch deck with no problem, there's no doubt in my mind that it would also work with the 42-inch deck. So for a $100 engine and about $10 in parts and about 5 hours of my time, we managed to get this 42-year-old tractor brought back to life. If any of you guys have got any questions about doing a swap on one of your tractors, feel free to leave me a comment, ask me some questions. I will do what I can to help you. Now, I know some of you guys wouldn't much care for giving up your electric start. On the non-Hemi Predator 212s, there are aftermarket electric start kits you can get for them. And obviously the other big thing about going this route is that you lose your battery and your charging system, so you have no way to power your headlights on your tractor. But there's also a cheap fix for that. I've done it in the past. You can get on Amazon and you can get M12 or M18 battery adapters. They even make them for DeWalt. Mount this thing on it. You've got a positive and a negative coming off, and you have got 12-volt power for the lighting on your tractor. Now, like always, I'll put the links for all the parts and tools used in this video down in the description. If you aren't subscribed to the channel yet, please do. It greatly helps me out. And before you go, be sure to hit the like button and leave me a comment. Like I said, let me know what you guys think of it. And if you got any questions, feel free to ask. So yeah, guys, that's going to do it for this one. Hopefully you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care.